Damian Rossi feared betrayal. He feared rival syndicates. He feared weakness. But nothing prepared him for the voice he heard at midnight. A voice so heartbreakingly beautiful that it stopped the most feared man in New York in his tracks. And when he discovered who was singing, everything changed. For most people, midnight brought silence. For Damian Rossi, midnight was when his empire became loud. The 35-year-old billionaire mafia king stood alone inside the top-floor office of the Rossi estate, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering skyline of New York. From a distance, the city looked peaceful. Up close, it was a battlefield disguised as civilization. Hidden beneath luxury penthouses, billion-dollar corporations, and elegant charity galas existed a network of syndicates constantly fighting for power, control, and influence. Damian ruled one of the largest. His empire stretched across finance, shipping, real estate, and private security. Powerful politicians respected him. Business leaders feared him. Rival syndicates watched his every move. Yet despite possessing everything most men desired, Damian lived a life built around isolation. Power demanded distance. Control demanded sacrifice. Trust had become a luxury he could no longer afford. Years earlier, betrayal had stolen people he once considered family. Since then, emotional attachment became a weakness he refused to entertain. His world operated on loyalty, discipline, and calculated decisions. Feelings had no place inside an empire. At least that was what he told himself. The Rossi estate reflected that philosophy perfectly. The massive mansion stood beyond the city limits, hidden behind private forests, gated entrances, and advanced security systems. Hundreds of cameras monitored every corner. Loyal employees maintained the property with military precision. Every room represented wealth, influence, and protection. To outsiders, it looked like paradise. To Damian, it felt empty. The mansion was full of people, yet somehow it remained lonely. Downstairs, while most residents slept, another figure quietly moved through the estate. Evelyn Hart preferred the night. The 25-year-old Maid worked evening shifts specifically because fewer people were around. It allowed her to remain invisible. Invisible felt safe. For years, hiding had become second nature. She carried scars nobody could see, a painful family history, a past she never discussed, memories she buried beneath routine and discipline. The estate offered something she desperately needed, a chance to disappear. Most employees barely noticed her, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Evelyn completed her responsibilities quietly, avoided attention, and never stayed in one place long enough for questions to begin. She wasn't interested in power. She wasn't interested in influence. She simply wanted peace. That particular night, her duties led her to one of the estate's rarely used grand ballrooms. The enormous room stood empty beneath crystal chandeliers. Moonlight spilled through tall windows, painting silver reflections across polished floors. The silence felt comforting. For the first time all day, she was completely alone, or so she believed. As she worked, a familiar sadness surfaced unexpectedly. Certain nights always felt heavier than others. Certain memories refused to stay buried. Without realizing it, she began humming softly, then singing. The melody carried through the ballroom like a whisper. Gentle, emotional, beautiful. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't meant for anyone else. It was simply a wounded soul finding comfort inside a song. The lyrics carried traces of heartbreak, hope, and survival. The voice itself felt raw and honest. Every note revealed emotions she spent years hiding from the world. Upstairs, Damian froze. At first, he thought he imagined it. The sound drifted faintly through the mansion's hallways. A voice, a woman's voice, soft enough to feel intimate, powerful enough to command attention. Something inside the melody stopped him instantly. For reasons he couldn't explain, he left his office. The song continued. Each note pulled him closer, past marble corridors, past silent staircases, past rooms he had walked through thousands of times without noticing. For the first time in years, Damien wasn't thinking about business, rival syndicates, or the constant pressure of protecting his empire. He was listening and feeling, a sensation he had spent years avoiding. The closer he moved toward the ballroom, the stronger the effect became. The voice carried something familiar. Loneliness. The same loneliness he recognized inside himself. When Damien finally reached the ballroom entrance, he stopped. Inside stood a young woman beneath the chandeliers. Completely unaware, she had an audience. Moonlight illuminated her dark hair. The enormous room surrounded her. And yet somehow she became the only thing he noticed. For several seconds, he simply watched, captivated. The most feared man in New York standing motionless because of a song. Then fate intervened. Evelyn turned. Her eyes met his. The music died instantly. The room fell silent. And Damien realized the woman behind the voice looked absolutely terrified that he had hurt her. Most women chased powerful men. Evelyn Hart did the opposite. The moment she realized the Mafia King had heard her sing, she disappeared, and that only made him more curious. The silence that followed their brief encounter inside the ballroom stayed with Evelyn long after she returned to her duties. For several seconds after seeing Damien Rossi standing in the doorway, her heart had pounded so loudly she thought he might hear it. Then came the embarrassment, not because she had done something wrong, but because someone had witnessed a side of her she worked very hard to keep hidden. Her voice wasn't meant for audiences. It wasn't meant for kings. It wasn't meant for powerful men capable of changing lives with a single decision. It belonged to the quiet spaces she used to survive loneliness. The next morning, Evelyn adjusted her routine. Then she adjusted it again and again. Every hallway Damien normally used became a hallway she avoided. Every room he might enter became a room she left early. She volunteered for different shifts, changed schedules whenever possible. If the king of the Rossi Empire walked into a room, she somehow managed to disappear before he noticed. At least that was her plan. Unfortunately, Damien Rossi noticed everything, especially now. What surprised him wasn't her beauty. New York was filled with beautiful women. It wasn't her voice either, although he found himself remembering it far more often than he should. It was the fact that she wanted absolutely nothing from him. That was rare. Everyone wanted something from Damien Rossi. Businessmen wanted access. Politicians wanted influence. Rival syndicates wanted leverage. Even friends occasionally wanted favors. Evelyn wanted distance. And somehow that made her impossible to ignore. Over the next week, Damien quietly observed her from afar. Never close enough to make her uncomfortable. Never obvious enough to attract attention. Yet he found himself noticing details. The way she arrived early every morning. The way she stayed late whenever extra work appeared. The way she treated every employee with equal kindness regardless of status. Most importantly, he noticed something else. She never complained. Not once. Even when assignments became difficult. Even when other employees became frustrated. Even when exhaustion occasionally appeared beneath her carefully controlled expression. She simply continued moving forward. The discipline fascinated him. Meanwhile, the estate staff began noticing something unusual. The king was paying attention. Not openly, not publicly, but enough for rumors to begin spreading through quiet whispers. House managers noticed Damien asking harmless questions about scheduling. Security personnel noticed him reviewing employee records longer than necessary. Several trusted advisors noticed his gaze occasionally lingering whenever Evelyn entered a room. Nobody understood why. And that mystery created curiosity throughout the estate. Evelyn sensed the change almost immediately. The whispers, the glances, the subtle attention. Fear quietly returned. For years, she had perfected invisibility. Attention often led to questions. Questions often led to the past. The past was something she had spent years hiding from. Her family history remained locked away for a reason. The fewer people knew, the safer everyone remained, especially her. That realization only strengthened her emotional walls. Whenever Damien appeared nearby, she became even more reserved, even more controlled. Conversations became shorter. Eye contact became rare. Every instinct told her to maintain distance from powerful men. Power complicated lives. Power attracted danger. Power destroyed safe places. Yet despite her efforts, Damien's curiosity continued growing. One afternoon, he reviewed personnel files inside his office, searching for answers he couldn't explain needing. Evelyn's employment record appeared remarkably ordinary. No disciplinary issues, no complaints, excellent performance reviews. But there were gaps. Years missing from her documented history. Missing addresses, missing references, small inconsistencies most people would overlook. Damien didn't overlook details, especially details connected to people he found interesting. The discovery planted a question inside his mind. Who was Evelyn Hart before she arrived at the estate? For the first time, curiosity became something deeper. Not obsession, not yet, but the beginning of one. A desire to understand someone who seemed determined to remain hidden. Days later, as evening settled over the estate, Damien stood near a second-floor balcony overlooking the gardens. Below, employees moved through their routines while security teams quietly monitored the property. Then he spotted Evelyn, alone, walking toward one of the greenhouse paths. The sight immediately drew his attention, not because of what she was doing, because of what happened next. A black sedan slowed briefly near the outer security road, only for a moment, barely noticeable, but long enough for someone inside the vehicle to focus directly on Evelyn. Damien's expression instantly changed. Years of experience sharpened his instincts. The vehicle wasn't lost. The timing wasn't random, and the attention wasn't accidental. As the sedan disappeared beyond the estate entrance, a cold realization settled inside his mind. Someone outside the Rossi estate had been watching Evelyn Hart, and they had been doing it long before he noticed. Evelyn thought she was hiding from her past. She had no idea her past had finally found her, and now powerful men were searching for her. For years, Evelyn Hart believed she had escaped. Not won, not healed, simply escaped. She had changed cities, changed jobs, changed routines, and buried every connection that could lead back to the life she once knew. The woman cleaning hallways inside the Rossi estate looked nothing like the young woman who had vanished 5 years earlier. That was intentional. Survival required disappearance. The fewer people who remembered her, the safer she remained. At least that was what she believed. Now that illusion was beginning to crack. 3 days after Damien noticed the suspicious vehicle outside the estate, a private intelligence report landed on his desk. Normally, employee matters never reached him personally. Yet Evelyn Hart had stopped being a normal employee the moment unknown individuals started watching her. The report was thin. Too thin. That alone concerned him. People usually left trails. Evelyn had left almost none. Missing addresses. Missing employment records. Missing years. Entire chapters of her life seemed deliberately erased. As Damien reviewed the file, a second report arrived from his intelligence division. This one contained information about the individuals investigating Evelyn. The names immediately caught his attention. Several belonged to organizations connected to rival syndicates. Not competitors. Not journalists. Not creditors. Syndicates. That changed everything. A cold silence settled over his office. Because syndicates never spent resources chasing ordinary women. Somewhere inside Evelyn's forgotten past existed something valuable. Something dangerous. Meanwhile, Evelyn remained completely unaware of the growing storm around her. She continued working quietly through the estate, trying to ignore the strange attention she occasionally felt. Yet the sensation of being watched had returned. The same feeling she remembered from years ago. The same fear she thought she left behind. Every time she noticed unfamiliar vehicles near the property, her stomach tightened. Every unexpected phone call made her uneasy. Every unknown face triggered old instincts. Heart pounding became familiar again. Sleep became harder. Memories became louder. One rainy evening, Damien finally uncovered the first real piece of truth. Evelyn Hart wasn't originally Evelyn Hart. Years earlier, she had belonged to one of New York's most influential financial families. Her father, William Hartwell, had built an empire through investment firms and corporate acquisitions. The Hartwell name once opened doors across the country. Then everything collapsed. A massive corruption scandal destroyed the family almost overnight. News channels covered the story for months. Investigations followed. Careers disappeared. The Hartwell empire vanished. And shortly afterward, so did William Hartwell's daughter. Nobody knew where she went. Until now. Damien leaned back in his chair. The pieces were finally starting to connect. The scandal itself wasn't what interested rival syndicates. The missing evidence was. Certain financial documents connected to the Hartwell collapse had never been recovered. Rumors suggested those records exposed hidden money channels used by powerful criminal organizations. For years, multiple syndicates searched for them, and now they believed Evelyn knew something. The truth was almost ironic. Evelyn had no idea she carried anything valuable. She had spent years running from shame. Others believed she was running with secrets. The misunderstanding alone made her dangerous. That same night, Damien ordered additional security measures around the estate. Surveillance increased. Entry points received extra monitoring. Security teams quietly adjusted patrol schedules. No announcements were made. No explanations offered. Protection simply appeared. When Evelyn eventually noticed, frustration replaced gratitude. She immediately understood who was responsible. Damien Rossi. The king of an empire she wanted no part of. The next morning, she confronted the changes indirectly by questioning several staff members. Nobody provided answers. Nobody explained anything, which only confirmed her suspicions. For the first time since arriving at the estate, anger surfaced. Not because she hated Damien, because she hated dependency. Powerful men always came with conditions. Protection always came with expectations. At least that had been her experience. She refused to become someone's responsibility. She refused to become someone's weakness. Most importantly, she refused to become someone's possession. Yet Damien seemed completely unaffected by her resistance. The more she tried creating distance, the more determined he became to ensure her safety. Not because she belonged to him, because she was in danger. The distinction mattered, even if Evelyn wasn't ready to see it. Over the following days, reports continued arriving. The surveillance outside the estate increased. The unknown investigators became bolder. Whispers spread through criminal networks. Someone had found the missing Hartwell heir, and multiple syndicates wanted her. The realization transformed concern into urgency. For the first time in years, Damien felt something personal entering the equation. The need to protect, the need to shield, the need to keep one specific person safe. Then, on a quiet Thursday evening, everything changed. A plain envelope arrived at the estate. No return address, no identifying marks, just one name written carefully across the front. Evelyn Hart. The moment she saw the handwriting, all color drained from her face. Because she recognized it immediately, it belonged to someone from a past she thought was buried forever. And whatever waited inside that letter had the power to change everything. For years, Evelyn slept with fear. Then she entered the safest place in America, and it belonged to a monster. The letter changed everything, not because of what it contained, because of how Evelyn reacted when she saw it. The moment she recognized the handwriting, all the carefully controlled emotions she had hidden for years briefly surfaced. Her hands trembled. Her breathing became uneven. The calm woman who quietly moved through the Rossi estate suddenly looked like someone standing at the edge of a memory she desperately wanted to escape. Damien noticed immediately. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand answers. He simply observed. That alone surprised Evelyn. Most powerful men viewed information as something they were entitled to. Damien Rossi possessed more power than anyone she had ever met. Yet somehow he never forced his way into her secrets. That realization stayed with her. The letter was eventually secured by Damien's private intelligence team for verification. Whoever sent it clearly knew details about Evelyn's past. More importantly, they knew exactly where she was. That fact alone elevated the threat level surrounding her. Within 24 hours, additional security measures quietly appeared around the estate. New surveillance systems, expanded patrol routes, restricted access zones, enhanced monitoring protocols. The Rossi estate was already one of the safest properties in America. Now it felt almost impossible to penetrate. At first, Evelyn hated it. The increased protection reminded her that danger was real. It reminded her that people were searching for her. It reminded her that the peaceful life she had carefully built might not be as secure as she believed. Yet over time, something unexpected happened. The fear started fading. Not completely, but enough for her to notice. For the first time in years, she stopped checking every window before sleeping. She stopped listening for unfamiliar sounds in the middle of the night. She stopped preparing escape plans every time she entered a new room. The constant state of survival began loosening its grip, slowly, carefully, like someone learning how to breathe again. A week later, Damien made another change. Without ceremony or attention, Evelyn was moved from the employee wing into a private guest suite located inside the main residence. The room overlooked beautifully landscaped gardens and private lakes hidden within the estate grounds. When she first entered, she stood silently near the doorway. The room felt peaceful. Soft lighting, warm colors, large windows, a private balcony. No signs of luxury being used to impress. Only comfort, only safety. For reasons she couldn't explain, her eyes filled with emotion, because she couldn't remember the last time a place felt like home. What affected her even more was Damien's behavior afterward. He never used the arrangement as leverage, never visited unexpectedly, never inserted himself into her daily routine. The room wasn't a gift. It wasn't a transaction. It was protection, nothing more. The distinction mattered. As days passed, unexpected conversations began forming between them, usually late at night, usually when the estate grew quiet and most people were asleep. Sometimes they crossed paths in the library, sometimes on the garden terraces, sometimes near the grand ballroom where everything started. The conversations never felt forced. Two lonely people simply sharing silence together, then occasionally sharing words. For the first time, Evelyn discovered the man behind the empire. Not the king, the man. Damien rarely discussed his personal life, but small pieces emerged over time. Lost friendships, broken trust, years spent carrying responsibilities nobody else understood. The loneliness hidden beneath power. It surprised her, because loneliness was something she understood intimately. One evening, while rain softly tapped against the estate windows, Evelyn found herself sharing parts of her own story. Not everything, just enough. Childhood memories. The pressure of growing up inside a powerful family. The fear that arrived when everything collapsed. The feeling of becoming invisible overnight. Damien listened quietly. No judgment, no interruptions, just understanding. For two emotionally scarred people, the moment felt strangely healing. Trust began forming where fear once existed. Loyalty followed shortly after. Not because either asked for it, because both recognized something familiar inside the other. Survivors. People who had learned to carry pain silently. People who understood what it meant to lose safety. The estate itself began transforming in Evelyn's mind. It no longer felt like the headquarters of a powerful empire. It felt like a safe place, a shield against everything chasing her. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't built around hiding. She was not a victim. She was becoming powerful, not through wealth, not through status, through healing. Then one evening, everything shifted again. While searching for a misplaced document in a private media room, Evelyn accidentally accessed a secured archive folder connected to the estate surveillance systems. At first, she intended to leave immediately. Then she noticed a familiar audio file. Her name. Heart pounding, she clicked it. The room instantly filled with music. Her music. The midnight song. Then another recording played. And another. And another. Dozens of recordings. Carefully organized. Carefully preserved. Every secret song she thought nobody had heard. Every moment she thought she was alone. Damien Rossi had saved them all. And suddenly Evelyn realized the most powerful man in New York had been listening far longer than she ever imagined. Damien Rossi controlled an empire. He controlled corporations, negotiations, alliances, and men powerful enough to shape entire industries. But one song controlled him, and that terrified him. For nearly a decade, Damien had built his life around discipline. Every decision served a purpose. Every relationship had boundaries. Every emotion remained carefully locked behind walls that nobody could cross. Then Evelyn Hart accidentally changed everything. The discovery inside the media archive affected her more than she expected. Long after leaving the room, she couldn't stop thinking about the recordings. Every song she had whispered in empty hallways. Every melody she believed vanished into silence. Somehow Damien had preserved them all. The realization stayed with her. Not because it felt invasive, because it felt personal, deeply personal. For the first time, Evelyn realized the most powerful man in New York hadn't simply noticed her. He had been listening. Meanwhile, Damien sat alone inside his office, overlooking the city skyline. The latest recording played softly through the room sound system. Outside, New York remained loud, competitive, and dangerous. Inside, Evelyn's voice transformed the atmosphere completely. The music did something nothing else could. It quieted the noise, the constant calculations, the pressure of maintaining an empire, the endless responsibility. For a few minutes, he stopped being a king. He simply listened. That frightened him, because emotional dependency was dangerous. Power demanded control, and control was slowly slipping away. Over the following weeks, subtle changes spread throughout the Rossi estate. Employees noticed them first. Damien seemed less distant, less cold. He spent more time on the estate instead of traveling between corporate offices. Meetings ended earlier. Security reviews became shorter. The king was changing. Nobody understood why. Only Damien knew the answer. And the answer had dark hair, quiet eyes, and a voice capable of reaching places inside him he thought had died years ago. Evelyn noticed changes too, not only in Damien, in herself. The fear she once felt around him continued fading. Their conversations became easier. Silences became comfortable. Trust developed naturally between two emotionally scarred people who understood loneliness better than most. One evening, they found themselves sitting on opposite sides of the estate's private garden terrace, while rain softly fell beyond the glass enclosure. The conversation flowed effortlessly. Books, music, childhood memories, dreams neither had spoken aloud in years. The emotional distance between them grew smaller, dangerously smaller. Neither acknowledged it. Both felt it. Across New York, however, other forces were paying attention. Several rival syndicates had become increasingly frustrated by their inability to locate the missing Hartwell evidence. Surveillance operations intensified. Financial pressure campaigns quietly expanded. Rumors spread through hidden networks. Someone inside the Rossi empire was protecting Evelyn Hart, and that protection created complications. Soon, unusual problems began appearing throughout Damien's business operations. Important contracts vanished unexpectedly. Investment deals collapsed without explanation. Strategic partnerships suddenly became unstable. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just enough disruption to raise suspicion. The attacks weren't aimed at his empire. They were messages, warnings. Someone wanted Damien distracted. Someone wanted Evelyn exposed. As pressure increased, Damien responded exactly as everyone expected. He protected what mattered. Additional security surrounded the estate. Private intelligence teams expanded their investigations. Every potential threat received immediate attention. For the first time, several senior advisors noticed something concerning. Damien wasn't acting like a king protecting an asset. He was acting like a protector guarding someone important, someone personal. The distinction made everyone nervous, because powerful men often made dangerous decisions when emotions became involved. One night, while reviewing security updates, Damien found himself staring at Evelyn's name longer than necessary. The realization arrived quietly. Mine, not ownership, not possession, responsibility, protection, a loyalty deeper than logic. The thought should have alarmed him. Instead, it felt natural. That frightened him even more, because losing her was becoming a possibility he couldn't tolerate. At the same time, Evelyn found herself struggling with a different fear. Leaving. Weeks earlier, escaping had been her primary goal. Now the estate felt like home, a safe place. The thought created unexpected anxiety. Because home meant attachment. Attachment meant vulnerability. And vulnerability often led to heartbreak. Neither realized how little time remained before everything changed. The betrayal arrived without warning, which made it devastating. Late one evening, a confidential intelligence report reached Damien's office. At first glance, it appeared routine. Then certain details immediately caught his attention. Encrypted communications, unauthorized security access, hidden financial transfers. The source shocked him. One of his most trusted senior advisors. A man who had worked beside him for years. A man whose loyalty had never been questioned. A man with access to everything. Damien read the report twice, then a third time, heart-pounding, because the evidence pointed toward one impossible truth. Someone inside his inner circle had betrayed the Rossi empire. And whatever they were planning, Evelyn Hart stood directly in the center of it. The entire empire noticed something was wrong, because for the first time in years, Damien Rossi looked afraid. Fear had never belonged to Damien Rossi. His employees had never seen it. His allies had never seen it. Even rival syndicates doubted he was capable of feeling it. The king of the Rossi Empire was known for control, calm decisions, calculated responses, unshakable confidence. Then Evelyn Hart disappeared, and everything changed. The morning began like any other. Security teams followed their normal routines. Estate staff moved through familiar schedules. Business operations continued across New York, Chicago, and Miami. By noon, nobody could find Evelyn. At first, the absence seemed harmless, then unusual, then alarming. By sunset, the Rossi estate entered full lockdown. Electronic gates sealed. Communications channels activated. Security personnel flooded every section of the property. The atmosphere transformed from luxury to crisis. Employees whispered nervously in hallways. Something was wrong, something serious, and everyone knew it. Inside the estate's command center, Damien stood silently before a wall of surveillance screens. Hundreds of camera feeds displayed roads, buildings, airports, and private properties connected to the empire. None of them showed Evelyn. The realization hit harder than he expected. For weeks he had convinced himself she was safe, protected, shielded. Now she was gone, and for the first time in years, control slipped through his fingers. Across the empire, every available resource shifted toward a single objective: find Evelyn Hart. Private investigators were redirected. Corporate intelligence teams were reassigned. Business negotiations worth hundreds of millions were postponed without explanation. Powerful partners demanded answers. Damien ignored them all. The empire could wait. Evelyn could not. Meanwhile, far from the estate, Evelyn sat inside an isolated coastal property overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The location surprised her. She expected danger. Instead, she found silence. The house was elegant, private, almost peaceful, which somehow made the situation more unsettling. Someone wanted her comfortable. Someone wanted her waiting. The realization kept her awake. Yet despite the uncertainty, Evelyn refused to panic. Fear had controlled enough of her life. She would not surrender to it again. She was not a victim. She became powerful the moment she stopped allowing circumstances to define her. So she observed, listened, watched, and eventually discovered something unexpected. The people surrounding her weren't interested in hurting her. They were interested in information. Information connected to her family. Information connected to the Hartwell scandal. Information she didn't even know existed. Back in New York, Damien's investigation uncovered something even more disturbing. The betrayal inside the empire went deeper than anyone imagined. The trusted advisor who had been secretly working against him wasn't acting alone. Hidden communications revealed connections stretching across multiple financial networks and rival syndicates. What initially appeared to be a simple betrayal was actually part of a larger conspiracy. For years, someone had been positioning themselves inside the Rossi empire, waiting, planning, watching, and Evelyn's arrival had accelerated everything. The discovery infuriated senior members of the organization. Loyalty was sacred. Betrayal was unforgivable. Suddenly, every relationship inside the empire faced scrutiny. Every trusted ally became a question mark. Every whisper carried weight. The empire wasn't just searching for Evelyn anymore. It was searching for the truth. Days later, a breakthrough finally arrived. One encrypted communication led investigators toward a private coastal estate registered under a shell corporation connected to the Hartwell case. The location matched several suspicious financial transfers. It was enough. Damien personally traveled there, not as a businessman, not as a king, as a man determined to find someone important. The journey felt longer than it was. Every passing mile increased the pressure inside his chest. Every delay felt unbearable. For the first time in years, the future seemed uncertain. When he finally entered the property, silence greeted him. Then relief. Evelyn stood near a large window overlooking the ocean. Safe, alive, unharmed. The sight stole the tension from his lungs. For a brief moment, neither moved. Neither spoke. The emotional distance that once separated them no longer existed. But before relief could fully settle, Evelyn revealed something that changed everything. During her time away, she had uncovered hidden documents connected to her father's personal records. Records she never knew existed. Records preserved long before the Hartwell empire collapsed. The information exposed secret financial relationships linking several major syndicates together. Money trails, political connections, hidden transactions, evidence powerful enough to destroy reputations, fortunes, and entire criminal organizations. Suddenly, the situation became terrifyingly clear. Evelyn had never been the target. The information connected to her was. And now she possessed a secret capable of bringing multiple syndicates to their knees. As Damien absorbed the revelation, a cold realization settled over him. The war everyone feared wasn't approaching. It had already begun. The song was never just a song. It was a message, a warning, and the key to everything. For years, Evelyn Hart believed the melody belonged to grief, a small piece of her childhood that somehow survived the collapse of her family. Whenever loneliness became unbearable, she found herself returning to the same tune, the same lyrics, the same haunting rhythm her father used to hum during quiet evenings long before the Hartwell empire disappeared. She never questioned it, never analyzed it, never imagined it mattered. Now, sitting inside a secure wing of the Rossi estate while rain tapped softly against the windows, she realized the song had been hiding something all along, something her father wanted her to find. The documents recovered from the coastal property filled an entire conference table. Financial records, private notes, coded ledgers, and personal journals stretched across the room. Damien's intelligence specialist had spent days trying to organize the information, yet certain pieces refused to fit together. Until Evelyn noticed a pattern. A sequence of numbers repeated throughout multiple documents. The same sequence appeared beside references to dates, locations, and transactions connected to powerful syndicates. At first it seemed meaningless. Then a memory surfaced. The melody. Certain notes followed the exact same pattern. Heart-pounding, Evelyn began comparing the documents to the song she had known since childhood. The room slowly fell silent, because what initially looked impossible suddenly made perfect sense. Her father hadn't left her a song. He had left her a map. Years earlier, William Hartwell realized powerful syndicates were using legitimate financial institutions to hide enormous amounts of money and influence. He collected evidence quietly, carefully. When he understood his life was in danger, he encoded critical information into something nobody would suspect. Music, a melody only his daughter would remember. A melody she carried for years without understanding its true purpose. The realization left Evelyn speechless. The song had survived because she loved it. The secret survived because she never stopped singing it. Across the table, Damien watched her carefully. For the first time, he saw the full weight of what she had been carrying. Not just fear, responsibility. Without knowing it, Evelyn had protected evidence capable of exposing some of the most powerful criminal networks in the world. And she had done alone. The thought affected him more than expected. For years, she had been hunted by shadows she couldn't even see. Yet somehow she survived. Not because someone rescued her, because she refused to break. She was not a victim. She became powerful long before anyone noticed. As the days passed, Damien and Evelyn worked together to decode the remaining information. Hours became nights. Nights became mornings. The process drew them closer in ways neither could avoid. The walls between them finally began disappearing. No more secrets. No more misunderstandings. No more distance. Trust fully replaced uncertainty. Loyalty replaced fear. One evening, after another breakthrough in the investigation, they found themselves alone inside the estate's private music room. The atmosphere felt different, calmer, lighter. For the first time since they met, the future no longer seemed impossible. The war surrounding the evidence was nearing its conclusion. Several syndicate networks had already begun collapsing under the weight of exposed information. Financial channels were closing. Hidden alliances were breaking apart. The danger wasn't gone, but hope had finally appeared. Evelyn stood near the piano, overlooking the estate gardens. The soft evening light illuminated the room, while silence settled comfortably between them. She no longer felt hunted. She no longer felt alone. Most importantly, she no longer felt the need to keep running. The Rossi estate had become something she never expected. A safe place, not because of walls, not because of security, because of Damien. The realization arrived quietly, powerfully, and once it arrived, she couldn't ignore it. Damien felt it too. For months, he had fought against emotions he considered dangerous. Control had always protected him. Distance had always protected him. Then Evelyn entered his world, and suddenly protecting her mattered more than protecting himself. The truth became impossible to deny. For the first time in years, the king lowered his guard. Not as the head of an empire, as a man. The admission wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. Both already knew. The connection had been growing for weeks, perhaps longer. The silence between them carried more meaning than words ever could. For a brief moment, peace finally seemed possible. The future felt close. Then everything changed. A priority intelligence alert arrived from New York. Damien opened the report. Read the first page, then the second. His expression hardened instantly. Evelyn noticed. The atmosphere shifted. Because according to the intelligence briefing, a powerful international syndicate had just entered New York. Not to acquire territory, not to negotiate alliances, to recover the Hartwell evidence. And this organization was far larger than any enemy they had faced before. The war they thought was ending had only been the beginning. The first time Damien heard her voice, she was a maid hiding in the shadows. Months later, the entire empire stood when she entered the room. The arrival of the international syndicate changed the rules of the game. Unlike the enemies Damien Rossi had faced before, these people weren't interested in territory, money, or influence. They wanted something far more valuable. The Hartwell evidence. The truth hidden inside Evelyn's song. For weeks, New York's underground world watched in silence as powerful organizations positioned themselves around the growing conflict. Rumors spread through financial circles. Politicians whispered behind closed doors. Corporate executives quietly shifted allegiances. Everyone understood the same thing. The woman once cleaning hallways inside the Rossi estate now stood at the center of a battle capable of reshaping multiple empires. Yet something unexpected happened. Evelyn stopped running. Years earlier, she would have disappeared. Changed cities. Changed identities. Started over. Not anymore. Fear no longer controlled her future. The emotionally scarred woman who once hid from attention had transformed into someone stronger. Someone willing to face the truth rather than escape it. She was not a victim. She became powerful. And for the first time, she understood exactly why. The final confrontation unfolded not through violence, but through revelation. The decoded Hartwell records were delivered to trusted international investigators, financial regulators, and independent oversight groups. Information spread carefully and strategically. Hidden accounts surfaced. Corrupt alliances collapsed. Decades of manipulation began unraveling. The syndicate's greatest weapon had always been secrecy. Now secrecy was gone. One by one, powerful networks started distancing themselves from the organization. Political protection disappeared. Financial support evaporated. Trusted partners became liabilities. The threat slowly collapsed beneath the weight of its own exposure. When the dust settled, the war was over. The evidence survived. The truth survived. And so did Evelyn. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Real peace. The Hartwell family story finally reached its conclusion. The scandal that destroyed her childhood had not been created by her father. The evidence proved he had spent years trying to expose corruption before powerful people silenced him. His name was restored. His legacy reclaimed. The burden Evelyn carried for years finally lifted. The healing wasn't immediate, but it was real. Back at the Rossi estate, life slowly transformed. The atmosphere felt lighter. Employees smiled more often. Security teams relaxed. The mansion no longer felt like a fortress preparing for war. It felt like home. A found family emerged naturally around them. Staff members who once viewed Evelyn as a quiet maid now treated her with genuine respect. Advisors listened when she spoke. Senior members of the empire valued her intelligence. Nobody saw her as invisible anymore. Most importantly, she no longer saw herself that way. Months later, Damien organized a private gathering inside the grand ballroom where everything had begun. The same room, the same chandeliers, the same midnight silence. Only this time, everything was different. The estate's most trusted people filled the ballroom. Advisors, security leaders, executives, employees, the entire Rossi empire. As the doors opened, conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward the entrance. Evelyn stepped inside. Elegant, confident, fearless. Gone was the woman hiding from her past. Gone was the woman afraid of being seen. In her place stood someone entirely new. A queen, not because Damien gave her power, because she earned it. One by one, people rose from their seats. Then another, until the entire room stood. The gesture carried no obligation, only respect. Emotion tightened in Evelyn's chest. Months ago, she entered this estate as someone trying to disappear. Now she belonged. Across the room, Damien watched her quietly. The king of a powerful empire. The man who once believed emotional distance was strength. The man who discovered safety inside a midnight song. Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither looked away. The future suddenly felt close. A safe place. A new beginning. A life no longer built around fear. Later that evening, the gathering moved toward its final moment. At the request of the staff, Evelyn stood near the ballroom piano, the same place where everything started. Silence filled the room. Then she began singing. The melody echoed beneath crystal chandeliers. Soft, beautiful, timeless. The song no longer sounded sad. It sounded free. Employees listened. Friends listened. The empire listened. And standing quietly at the back of the room, Damien listened too. The king and his queen, finally united. The final note faded. Applause filled the ballroom. Then a security director entered unexpectedly. The atmosphere shifted instantly. In his hands rested a sealed black intelligence file. Urgent. Classified. He delivered it directly to Damien. Curiosity became concern. Damien opened the folder. Read the first page. Then the second. His expression hardened immediately. Evelyn noticed. The room fell silent once more, because buried inside the report was proof of something impossible. Someone from Damien Rossi's past had just resurfaced after years of silence. Someone who knew every weakness inside the Rossi empire. Someone who knew exactly how much Evelyn meant to him. And someone who had just declared their return. The war was over. But a far more personal nightmare had only just begun.